es que me hace mucha ilusión como lector de los libros de Phil o de Philip Ball, y como también seguidor de sus artículos, porque es uno de esos raros escritores que, siendo muy claros y siendo muy divulgativos, sé que esto puede llevar a muchos errores, pues ha escrito libros auténticamente esenciales en lo que toca a la política y a la relación entre ciencia y política. Él es uno de los escritores científicos más populares del mundo, es licenciado en química por la Universidad de Oxford y se doctoró posteriormente en Bristol. Lleva 10 años siendo editor y redactor de un milagro de revista que se llama Nature, que es una revista de ciencia muy, muy seguida, y en 2004, lo cual fue un auténtico bombazo, publicó un libro maravilloso que se llama Critical Mass, How One Things Lead to Another, es decir, masa crítica, subtitulado así por la editorial Turner, Cambio, Caos y Complejidad. Siempre traigo los libros de nuestros ponentes, no por hacer de hombre anuncio, sino porque nos leemos la obra de la gente que viene aquí a hablarnos para conocerles mejor antes de que vengan, y yo os puedo asegurar que este es un libro para mí absolutamente revelador. Es un libro de ciencia que, para que os hagáis una idea, sus primeros capítulos hablan de Hobbes y de la teoría del Estado moderno, y Phil hace una cosa que no nos debería sorprender, que es relacionar los descubrimientos científicos con la sociopolítica, que es algo que han hecho todos los filósofos en la historia de la filosofía. Si lo conocéis un poco, pues sabréis que es una realidad, pero últimamente a los científicos se les ha vetado un poquito el hablar de cosas que no sean de su dominio, y creo que Philip con este libro rompió una lanza increíble a favor de que la ciencia sea parte integral de la sociedad. Ayer Beatriz Preciado nos hablaba de biopolítica, de políticas de género, y establecía, si os acordáis, algunas conexiones absolutamente bestiales entre ciencia, política y, en su caso, imposición. Yo estoy muy contento de que Philip esté aquí con nosotros y nos va a explicar un poco lo que resumido en lo que explicó en este libro, como algunas de las teorías de la física contemporánea pues explican algunos fenómenos como el caos, la bolsa, incluso las crisis económicas. Como Philip os pasará imágenes, yo tendré el placer de situarme, dejar este set tan televisivo que tenemos y situarme en la grada. So thank you very much, Phil, for being here. It's an honor for us, and congratulations on your book and all your work you're doing, and we're delighted to have you here in Murcia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thanks very much for turning up so early in the morning, relatively early. I'll try to go at a pace that will allow the translation to happen, and I want to start off with these two recent comments, and I'll read them out so that they can be translated. The centre of politics has shifted. The neoliberal thinking that has dominated the industrial world for nearly 30 years has led to a financial crisis, which in turn caused the global downturn. Clearly, there can be no turning back to the failed and discredited politics of old. Instead, we need to use this time of emergency to aim for a different future and to get there by different means. This is not a crisis of capitalism, but a crisis of a society and democracy that have failed to regulate the market. And then, secondly, many of the problems our economy faces are the result of the use of misguided models. Unfortunately, too many economic policy makers took the overly simplistic models of courses in the principles of economics and assumed they could use them as the basis for government policy. We need a new balance between market and government. Now, comments like these have been made many times since the last summer, and in essence what they are saying is that we have entered a period in which we are no longer certain that we know how to govern a society based on capitalism. It seems trivial to say that the mere existence of a democratic system doesn't fully answer that question. But I think it is fair to say that many people in democratic nations have been profoundly shocked by the realization of the weaknesses that a democratic economy can have, in which banks can vanish and your money with it, and entire nations can go bankrupt almost overnight. Now, I don't claim to be going to give you any answers to the difficult questions that arise from the current crisis, but I'm struck by two things. Firstly, it seems that the world situation is reawakening interest in old questions about governance that many people had assumed to be settled, particularly in relation to the interplay between laws and institutions and the freedom of individuals, and particularly in an economic context. And second, it seems that there are some people, like Joseph Stiglitz, who feel that a part of the solution lies in having a better fundamental understanding, a better model of how society and its structures operate. In other words, perhaps we need to start looking again at whether there is a genuine science of society and at the role that this might play in helping us to erect the framework on which society hangs. And that's basically the topic of my talk today. And in particular, I want to show how it has been explored in the past, when many political philosophers and policymakers tended to take less for granted than they do today. I also want to give some idea of the ways that science, and in particular ideas from physics, are enjoying a resurgence in the past 2 decades in sociology, in being applied to society, and to talk about the value of what that potentially might have. And this approach really relies on the idea that there are laws of society in the same sense that there are laws of nature, like those that describe the motion of the planets. And this reflects an essentially mechanistic view of the world, a belief that it can be understood as a system of forces that govern the interaction between the component parts. Now, that idea can be traced in Greek philosophy, but it first found explicit expression within what we might consider to be modern science around the early 17th century, in the time of René Descartes and Francis Bacon and Galileo. This Cartesian mechanical or mechanistic philosophy relies on 2 principles. Firstly, that all phenomena can be understood on the basis of particles in motion, and these motions can be changed only by direct interaction with other particles. Galileo and Isaac Newton began to uncover the laws that dictated those motions. Now, applied to living creatures, this mechanistic philosophy looks crude to us today. But the devices that were used as analogies for the human body in the 17th century, like clocks and pumps and water mills, these represented the most advanced technology of their time. So it was no greater insult to nature for Descartes to say that the body is a machine made by the hands of God than it is to regard now the human brain as a fantastically complex computer. The first person to try to understand what this mechanical model of the universe meant for human society, and in particular for questions of governance, was the English philosopher Thomas Hobbes. And in the 1630s, Hobbes became a part of the group of French mechanical empiricists, a group of philosophers that were centered in Paris. And he traveled to Italy to meet Galileo. And then during the 1640s, he set out to build a political theory based on Galileo's idea that, as Hobbes saw it, that all bodies seek to remain in motion. And the result was first his Latin book, De Sive, published in 1642, and then his major work in the English language, Leviathan, which appeared just after the English Civil War in 1651. Now, Leviathan seeks